more military people than we needed to kill. We didn't want to kill Americans because we thought when it was a ground invasion that we might lose tens of thousands of Americans, so we overdid it with the bombing. But does this make this not a just war? I submit to you that there have been far worse cases in just wars of purposeful killing of civilians, and I'm not saying that there was purposeful killing of civilians. In the Second World War, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in Dresden and Hamburg, there were purposeful killings of tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of civilians. That did not make World War II not a just war. It was a just war. Sherman destroyed everything from Atlanta to the sea in the Civil War. I submit to you that the Civil War was a just war. And I submit to you that this war, too, was a just war. Christopher?
One quick note before we move on to Mr. Hitchens. Remember that after the two summarizing statements, there'll be a period of exchange between the two speakers. That will start off with a question by Mr. Hitchens for Mr. Kondracke. They'll have 5 or 10 minutes to discuss that, and then reverse it, question from Mr. Kondracke to Mr. Hitchens. First, though, the second summary from Mr. Hitchens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. I might go as far as to say comrades and friends, for coming and showing by your presence that it isn't true that Americans are either apathetic or mindlessly joyous about the present state of affairs. Since, as it must now be apparent, the rubric of our discussion this evening could just as well be or have been, is the Gulf War a just war? Since it is, as we told you it would be, still going on, and will be going on for some considerable time. For those of you who say to yourselves, or have said it to you by others, well, you feel better for having gone through it this far, your morale is higher, your confidence in your country greater, your feeling about yourself superior, and so on. One hears this, one never hears anyone say it about themselves, only about others. Suggestive, a bit like drug taking. But that public opinion is, after all, what everyone thinks everybody else believes. But to those who might think, yes, we do feel better about ourselves, stronger, surely, more confident, undoubtedly, for this, I want to ask, how did you feel before, in that case? That it should have taken this to put that spring in your step, that bounce in your buggy, that jauntiness in your speech? Because this is serious stuff. And I can't match, I'm envious, I should say, about not being able to. I can't match Morton in his television opening shtick. I mean, I'm a much more humble performer than I'm hoping to overtake and surpass him. My contribution in the Gulf War was principally, there came a point when CNN got to H in the Rolodex of people at the bottom of the barrel they hadn't yet asked about. As a result, I found myself having a lunchtime debate with Charlton Heston, who did not say that missiles don't kill people, people kill people, I'm glad to say. In fact, I think he lost because he didn't realize it was a look-alike contest. But I did take the liberty of asking him if he could name counterclockwise the countries that have common borders with Iraq. And I wanted to ask him because I wanted to ask the viewers, since those of you who favor the unloading of that amount of high explosive on a country, I think, owe it the compliment of knowing where it is. Even if you don't care that it is a society as well as a country, I think you must at least incline in favor of its geography. Charlton Heston said he thought it had common borders with Bahrain and the Soviet Union. No Arab country has a border with the Soviet Union. Bahrain is notorious, among other things, for being an island. The pristine integrity of the borders of Bahrain needs no guarantee from General Schwarzkopf. The restless oceans itself guarantee this. Now that some people think it's over, which I'm going to argue that it is not, we hear from philosophers, not Augustinian or Thomist, but Gingrichian, that those of us who thought it was a bad idea owe you an apology. Well, what did we tell you would happen if George Herbert Walker Bush got his way. We said there would be appalling environmental devastation, on a scale, in the oil world at any rate, hitherto unimagined. We said there would be casualties of a sort to turn even the stout stomach of Richard Cheney. We said there would be an appalling political destabilization of the region, one that would be long-term and difficult to control or predict. We said there would at home be the aggrandizement of a redundant military industrial establishment that had lost its place and its way with the end of the Cold War, and we said there would be a giant diversion from the real issues of the new Europe, the newly emancipated Eastern Europe, and the terrible divisions between rich and poor in the Arab world and everywhere else. That's what we said would happen, and we should apologize. I repudiate this offer. There is only one alteration I would make, I think, as I survey the list of our predictions. There's only one codicil I would add. When we said that there would be horrendous casualties, we probably overstated the number we thought would be American, but we definitely understated the number that we thought would be Iraqi. And I hope you, ladies and gentlemen, don't want it said about you that the casualties don't count if they're not American. And I hope that you would find 100,000 uniformed Iraqis, and I'll come to the figures that Morton contests in just a second, and an uncounted but very considerable number of civilian Iraqis, a very high price, no matter what you think of the price you would pay for the rescue of George Bush's face. Valuable face? Worth a life or two? Come on, what do you reckon? 5,000 lives to save that face? 10? Who's counting? In this case, nobody's counting. The reason why the 100,000 figure is the ballpark figure is this. That's what General Schwarzkopf's people told the Wall Street Journal they thought was the minimum. They said if you want the ballpark figure, it's between 100 and 200,000. The mortuary platoons, as they are called, moved in very quickly as they had to, with bulldozers as they had to cover up as fast as they could. Not all of that was cover-up. Some of it was just, for God's sake, you can't leave them rotting. We'll never really know. But that's 100,000 right there on the southern front. And remember, we had no quarrel with the Iraqi people. Oh, dear me, no. Remember, that was a constituent of the just war. Our quarrel isn't with them. Well, there are at least 100,000 on that front alone to whom that point need no longer be made. Let us move then to the northern front, where there were no reporters, where we had to rely instead on the Kurdish Democratic Party, Jamal Talabani's party now aligned with the Bush administration, or at least until yesterday it was, when it found out the Bush administration isn't aligned with it. But anyway, when it was so aligned, it had observers monitoring the bombing. And I'll tell you exactly what they told the Defense Department and what appeared on the front page of the Washington Post in December. They said, in this province of Kurdistan, just this province, one province, on the Turkish border, where our fighters have been standing on high places and buildings to watch the bombing, we think only 3,000 civilians have died as collateral damage. But we consider the sacrifice worth it because the Americans will bring us an independent Kurdish republic. Well, they had some excuse for being fooled, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have that excuse. If you don't want to know that in that one province of Kurdistan, according to America's imagined allies, or rather those who imagined America to be their allies, that 3,000, grim though it was and in a grim province, was thought worthwhile that week for the sacrifice for the birth of a nation, yes. But for the sacrifice for George Bush's face, I think not. And that's one province, 1 week. You don't really want to know, face it. I don't really want to know how many people. But what we do know is that every effort is made to keep the estimate low, and the lowest estimates are appalling. Now, to borrow from the ridiculous Hitler analogy, it is as if the citizens of Dresden had been murdered and the Führer had been confirmed in power. Who would then say Dresden was the evidence of a just war? Who would dare come out and say that the incineration of a population and the consecration of its dictator, in the name of which the incineration took place, was the proof of justice because the president said so? Who would have the face to tell you that? Is there anyone you know who you could look in the eye and say that to over the ruins of Dresden and Kurdistan? Do you want to read Samir Khalil's piece